Life has a funny way of serving up the unexpected on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning. As I straightened my charcoal gray suit jacket and pushed through the heavy oak doors of Harrison and Parker Law, my mind was fixed on one thing: closing this tech company case and making partner by year's end. "Emily, they're waiting in conference room A," James called out as I passed his office. His tone carried that edge of urgency I'd grown accustomed to over my 8 years at the firm. The client's apparently some hotshot in the tech world. I nodded, gathering my thoughts while my heels clicked against the marble floor. The morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the hallway. My case files felt heavier than usual today. The first thing I noticed when I entered the conference room was her eyes. Brilliant blue, sharp as winter sky, and fixed directly on mine. Melissa Brown sat at the head of the table, her blonde hair caught in the sunlight, wearing a tailored navy blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Miss Parker," she said, rising to shake my hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "I've heard impressive things about your track record." Something shifted in the air between us. A current, subtle but unmistakable, that made me momentarily forget the other suits in the room. I pushed the feeling aside, settling into my chair and opening my laptop. "Let's discuss your situation, Ms. Brown," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "I understand there are some complex regulatory issues surrounding your latest software release." For the next 2 hours, we dove into the details of her case. Melissa spoke with passion about her company's innovations, her hands moving expressively as she explained technical concepts. I found myself leaning forward, drawn in not just by the legal complexities, but by her infectious enthusiasm. "The regulations weren't written with this kind of technology in mind," she argued, running a hand through her hair in frustration. "We're operating in completely uncharted territory." "That's exactly why you need solid legal representation," I replied, already mapping out strategies in my mind. "We'll need to demonstrate that your innovations serve the public interest while technically complying with existing frameworks." As the meeting wrapped up, Melissa lingered behind as the others filed out. She approached my end of the table, her perfume carrying hints of vanilla and something woodsy I couldn't quite place. "I have a good feeling about this, Emily," she said, my name sounding different somehow in her voice. "Would you be interested in discussing the case further over dinner? I know this fantastic little Italian place." My heart skipped. Warning bells rang in my head. Professional boundaries, conflict of interest, the delicate nature of attorney-client relationships. "I make it a policy not to socialize with clients," I said, gathering my papers with deliberate care. "Fair enough," she smiled, sliding her business card across the table. "But if you change your mind about that policy, my personal number's on the back." I watched her leave, her card burning a hole in my pocket. As I returned to my office, James appeared in my doorway, looking concerned. "Emily, a word? There's something you should know about Brown Tech's reputation in the industry. This case could make or break us." I sank into my chair, the weight of the situation settling over me. What had started as a standard corporate defense case was quickly becoming something far more complicated. And those blue eyes and that business card weren't making things any simpler. Later that night, as I reviewed case files in my quiet apartment, my fingers kept straying to that card, tracing the embossed letters of her name. Professional boundaries had never felt quite so constraining. The next few days blurred into late nights at the office, surrounded by stacks of regulatory documents and case precedents. What kept drawing my attention wasn't the complex legal framework, but rather the fascinating woman behind Brown Tech's innovations. "Emily, you've been here since dawn," James commented, leaning against my office door frame. "The partners notice dedication, but don't burn yourself out." I nodded absently, my eyes fixed on a video of Melissa giving a TED Talk about ethical technology development. Her passion radiated through the screen, making my chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Midnight snack break? I'm still at the office too." I hesitated, then replied, "Legal strategy discussion only." 20 minutes later, we sat in my office, sharing Thai takeout over scattered papers. Melissa had traded her blazer for a soft cream sweater that made her eyes seem even bluer. "Your innovation in neural interface technology is remarkable," I said, trying to keep things professional. "But these privacy concerns—" "Let me show you something," she interrupted, pulling out her laptop. As she leaned close, her shoulder brushing mine, she pulled up technical specifications that made my legal concerns shift perspective. "This is incredible," I breathed, understanding dawning. "You've actually built in safeguards beyond what regulations require. Most people don't take time to look deeper," she said softly. Her eyes met mine, holding for a moment too long. "Would you like to see more outside the office? The Arlington Cycling Club meets Saturday mornings." My pulse quickened. "Ms. Brown?" "Melissa," she corrected. "And it's just cycling. Fresh air might help us both think clearer." Against my better judgment, I found myself at the cycling club that weekend. Melissa was already there, her hair pulled back, wearing fitted cycling gear that made me momentarily forget about professional boundaries. "First time?" she asked, helping me adjust my borrowed helmet. Her fingers brushed my neck, sending shivers down my spine. The morning air was crisp, autumn leaves crunching under our tires as we rode through Arlington's trails. Away from the office, conversation flowed easily between us. She told me about growing up with technology-obsessed parents, while I shared stories about my journey through law school. We stopped at a scenic overlook, catching our breath. "You're full of surprises, Emily," she said, handing me a water bottle. "Most lawyers I know wouldn't spend their Saturday like this." "Most clients don't challenge my perspectives like you do," I replied, then immediately regretted how personal it sounded. The moment hung between us, charged with possibility. Melissa stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. Maybe that's a good thing. Just then, my phone buzzed, James calling with urgent case updates. Reality crashed back in as headlines flashed across my screen. "Brown Tech faces ethics investigation." "Melissa," I said, my lawyer voice returning. "We need to talk about these allegations." Her expression shifted, a shadow crossing her face. "Not everything is what it seems, Emily. Some battles are worth fighting differently." As we rode back in tense silence, I realized I was falling into dangerous territory. The line between professional and personal was blurring, and I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it. That night, reviewing new case documents, I discovered concerning patterns in Brown Tech's early testing phases. Yet all I could think about was the way Melissa's eyes lit up when she talked about changing the world through technology. The business card she'd given me still sat on my desk, her personal number now saved in my phone. Professional boundaries had never felt so much like prison walls, and I was starting to wonder if some rules were meant to be challenged. As I finally left the office near midnight, a text lit up my phone. "Same time next Saturday? M." I stared at those words for a long time, knowing my answer could change everything. The smart choice was clear. The right choice was clear. But somehow, my fingers typed a different response entirely. Saturday morning arrived with a perfect autumn chill in the air. The Arlington Cycling Club gathered in the parking lot of Bluemont Park, morning mist still clinging to the grass. I spotted Melissa immediately, adjusting her bike's gears with practiced ease. "Ready for the long trail?" she asked, her blue eyes sparkling with challenge. "It's a beautiful route through the countryside." We set off with the group, but somehow found ourselves naturally falling behind. The trail wound through forests painted in gold and crimson, leaves dancing in our wake. Melissa led the way, her blonde hair catching sunlight through her helmet. "You're keeping up well for a city lawyer?" she called back, playfully increasing her pace. "Don't underestimate me," I replied, matching her speed. The physical exertion felt liberating after weeks trapped in the office. We reached a scenic ridge overlooking the Potomac River, the water glinting like scattered diamonds below. As we caught our breath, dark clouds began rolling in unexpectedly. "Looks like rain," Melissa observed, checking her phone's weather app. "There's a cafe about 2 miles ahead. We could wait it out there." The first drops fell as we pedaled faster, the wind picking up around us. By the time we reached the small cafe, we were both laughing and soaked to the skin. "2 hot chocolates," Melissa ordered, leading us to a corner table. The cafe was cozy, with steamed windows and the smell of fresh coffee. We watched the rain hammer against the glass, our bikes safely stored under the awning outside. "You've got a leaf in your hair," she said softly, reaching across to brush it away. Her fingers lingered near my cheek, sending warmth through me that had nothing to do with the hot chocolate. "Tell me something real," I said suddenly, "something not in your company bio or case files." Melissa's expression softened. "I restore vintage motorcycles in my spare time. My father taught me before he passed away. It's where I feel closest to him." The rain drummed steadily outside as we shared stories. She told me about her first failed startup, her dreams of developing technology to help disabled children. I opened up about the pressure of being a female lawyer in a male-dominated firm, my passion for environmental law. Sometimes I wonder if I'm fighting the right battles, she confessed, tracing patterns in the condensation on her mug. What do you mean? The tech world. It's not always what it seems. Sometimes the biggest challenges aren't technical, they're ethical. Thunder cracked outside, making us both jump. Melissa's hand found mine on the table, warm and steady. The touch sent electricity through my arm, and I knew I should pull away. Instead, I turned my palm up, our fingers intertwining. Emily, she whispered, leaning closer. The cafe's dim lighting cast shadows across her face, making her eyes seem deeper, more intense. My heart raced as she moved closer still. The rational part of my brain screamed about professional ethics and boundaries, but it was drowned out by the sound of rain, and my own pulse in my ears. Her lips met mine, soft and tentative at first, then with growing certainty. The world narrowed to this moment, the taste of chocolate, the sound of rain, the feeling of her hand in my hair. When we finally broke apart, reality came rushing back. I stood abruptly, nearly knocking over my chair. I can't. We can't. Emily, wait, Melissa called, but I was already heading for the door. The rain stopped, I said, not meeting her eyes. We should head back. The ride back to Bluemont Park was silent, heavy with unspoken words. As we loaded our bikes into our respective cars, Melissa finally spoke. I don't regret it, she said quietly. And I don't think you do either. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling, my mind racing. That night, I lay awake staring at my ceiling, knowing tomorrow I'd have to face her across a conference table and pretend this day never happened. But every time I closed my eyes, I felt the ghost of her kiss, heard the rain on windows, and wondered if some rules were worth breaking after all. The headlines hit like a tsunami on Monday morning. Brown tech under fire, ethical violations alleged in neural interface testing. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as I rushed to the office, my stomach in knots. James intercepted me before I could reach my office. Conference room, now. The senior partners want to discuss the Brown tech situation. The tension in the room was palpable as I took my seat. Managing partner David Wilson's face was thunderous as he tossed the morning paper onto the table. This is a disaster, he growled. Anonymous sources claim Brown tech tested neural interfaces on uninformed subjects. Emily, what the hell is going on? My mind raced back to Melissa's words about ethical challenges. These allegations don't match our client's disclosure documents, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Distance yourself from this case, James advised quietly. Let someone else handle it, your reputation. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. I know this case inside and out. I know our client. Too well, perhaps? David's eyes narrowed. There are rumors about you and Miss Brown getting rather close. My face burned, but years of courtroom experience kept my expression neutral. My personal life isn't relevant to my ability to handle this case professionally. The meeting dragged on, each minute feeling like an hour. When I finally escaped to my office, there were 3 missed calls from Melissa. As if summoned by my thoughts, she appeared in my doorway, closing the door behind her. Emily, we need to talk. Her usual confidence was shaken, dark circles under her eyes suggesting sleepless nights. These allegations, are they true? I interrupted, needing to know. She sank into the chair across from me. It's complicated. The early testing phase, corners were cut, not by me, but by the previous management team. My world tilted sideways. Damn it, Melissa. You should have told me everything from the start. I was trying to protect the company. The technology we're developing could help millions. She leaned forward, desperate. Stay late tonight. Let me show you the full documentation, please. Hours later, we sat surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. Melissa's laptop displayed internal emails and testing protocols, painting a complex picture of innovation rushing ahead of ethics. See? She pointed to a series of documents. We discovered the violations and immediately implemented new protocols. The current technology is completely ethical. The office was dark except for my desk lamp, casting shadows across her face. She moved closer, her hand brushing my arm. "Emily, I need you. Not just as my lawyer." "This is such a bad idea," I whispered, but I was already pulling her closer. Her lips found mine with desperate intensity. Papers scattered to the floor as she pressed me against the desk, her hands tangling in my hair. The professional boundaries I'd built so carefully crumbled with each touch, each breath. We made love right there in my office, the city lights twinkling through the windows our only witnesses. It was reckless, inappropriate, and absolutely perfect. Afterward, as we straightened our clothes and retrieved scattered documents, reality started seeping back in. "The partners want me off your case," I admitted. "Fight it," Melissa said fiercely. "We can handle this together. The truth is on our side." As she left, I stood at my window watching her car disappear into the night traffic. My career, reputation, and heart were all balanced on a knife's edge. The wise choice would be to step away, protect myself from the impending storm. But as I gathered the fallen papers, I found myself mapping out defense strategies instead. Some things were worth risking everything for. I just hoped I wouldn't regret this decision when the dust settled. After 3 days of intense media scrutiny and endless meetings, I needed space to clear my head. The Arlington Animal Shelter stood like a sanctuary on the quiet street, its brick walls promising respite from the chaos of my professional life. "First-time volunteer?" Sarah Thompson, the shelter director, greeted me with a warm smile. "We can always use help with the afternoon dog walks." The repetitive motion of walking eager dogs along tree-lined paths helped quiet my racing thoughts. Each wagging tail and grateful nuzzle reminded me why I became a lawyer: to make a difference, to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. "You're a natural with them," Sarah commented as I returned with a particularly energetic golden retriever. "Most newcomers struggle with Max, but he's perfectly calm with you." I was kneeling to unclip Max's leash when a familiar voice froze me in place. "Sarah, I brought those supplies you needed." Melissa stopped mid-sentence as our eyes met. She stood in the doorway, arms full of pet supplies, looking as surprised as I felt. "Oh, you two know each other?" Sarah looked between us curiously. "We've met," I managed, standing quickly. Max whined at the sudden tension in the room. Sarah, sensing the atmosphere, tactfully excused herself. Melissa set down her boxes, her movements deliberate. "I didn't expect to see you here." Likewise, I busied myself with organizing leashes. I needed a break from everything. "I've been volunteering here for years," she said softly. "These animals, they don't judge you for your family name or your past mistakes. They just love unconditionally." Something in her voice made me look up. Vulnerability replaced her usual confidence, and suddenly I understood there was much more to Melissa Brown than media headlines suggested. "Walk with me?" she asked, gesturing to a German shepherd waiting patiently by the door. "Luna here needs her afternoon exercise." The autumn sun cast long shadows as we walked the shelter's back trail, 2 dogs trotting happily ahead of us. Melissa spoke quietly about growing up in Arlington's wealthiest family, the pressure of inheriting a tech empire, and her determination to forge her own path. "The Brown family name opens doors," she admitted. "But it also comes with chains. Every decision scrutinized, every mistake magnified. That's why I started volunteering here. It reminds me what really matters." We stopped at a small pond, watching the dogs splash playfully in the shallow water. "The neural interface technology," she continued, "it wasn't about profit. My brother, he lost his ability to communicate after an accident. I wanted to help people like him." Her hand found mine, warm despite the cool air. "That's why these allegations hurt so much. We're trying to help people, Emily. The previous management team's mistakes shouldn't destroy that dream." The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, reflecting off the pond's surface. Luna and Max played nearby, their joy uncomplicated by human concerns. "Why didn't you tell me all this before?" I asked, turning to face her. "Would it have made a difference, as my lawyer, as whatever we are?" The question hung between us like autumn leaves suspended in still air. Before I could answer, Sarah's voice called out from the shelter, breaking the moment. "I should go," Melissa said, reluctantly releasing my hand. "But Emily, thank you for listening. Not many people do anymore." I watched her walk away, leading Luna back to the shelter. The weight of new understanding settled over me, about Melissa, about the case, about my own heart's compass. Max nudged my hand with his wet nose, reminding me of his presence. Yeah, buddy, I sighed, scratching behind his ears. Life's complicated, isn't it? As I drove home that evening, the sunset still painting the sky, I realized that sometimes the truth, like love, shows up in unexpected places. And sometimes, the most important cases of our lives aren't the ones we argue in court. The morning sun barely penetrated the heavy clouds as I strode into Harrison and Parker. The weight of recent events hung in the air like the threatening rain outside. The senior partners want to see you. James caught me at the elevator. His expression carried concern I hadn't seen before. Emily, they're talking about removing you from all major cases. The conference room felt colder than usual. David Wilson sat at the head of the table, his face stormy. Your handling of the Brown Tech case has raised serious concerns, he began without preamble. I've done nothing but represent our client's interests, I countered, keeping my voice steady. Have you? He slid a photograph across the table. My heart stopped. It showed Melissa and me at the animal shelter, our hands clearly intertwined. This was sent anonymously to every partner. My personal life compromises this firm's integrity, he cut in. Step away from the case, Emily. Take a leave of absence, or we'll be forced to consider more permanent solutions. I left the conference room in a daze, rain now pelting against the windows. My phone buzzed, Melissa's name lighting up the screen. Instead of answering, I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. The drive to Brown Tech's headquarters was automatic, my mind racing through options. Security waved me through. They knew me well by now. I found Melissa in her office, surrounded by screens displaying technical data. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. The partners know about us. She turned, her blue eyes clouding with concern. Emily, I'm so sorry. I never meant to complicate your career. It's more than that. I paced the room, rain streaming down the windows behind me. Your family's involvement in the early testing phase. Why didn't you tell me everything? Because I was ashamed, she burst out, standing abruptly. My father's decisions, the corners cut, I've spent years trying to fix his mistakes. Damn it, Melissa. I slammed my hand on her desk. I could have helped if I'd known the whole truth. Instead, I'm flying blind, trying to defend you while my career implodes. She moved closer, reaching for my hand. I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection, I pulled away. I need honesty. Thunder cracked outside, matching the tension in the room. Melissa's eyes filled with tears I'd never seen before. You want honesty? Fine. I'm falling in love with you, Emily. And it terrifies me because everyone I've ever loved has either betrayed me or left me. The confession hung in the air between us. Before I could respond, she crossed the space between us, her lips finding mine with desperate intensity. The kiss tasted of tears and truth, breaking down the last of my defenses. When we finally parted, breathing heavily, the rain had softened to a gentle patter. I can't lose this case, she whispered against my neck. And I can't lose you. Then trust me, I said, holding her face in my hands. Tell me everything, no more secrets. For the next hours, she laid bare the full history of Brown Tech's neural interface development, her father's ruthless pursuit of progress, the test subjects chosen from desperate circumstances, her discovery of the truth after his death. I've spent 5 years rebuilding everything, she finished, her voice hoarse. New protocols, ethical guidelines, transparent testing. But those early mistakes, they're coming back to haunt us. Night had fallen outside her office windows, the city lights twinkling through the remnants of rain. I stood looking out at Arlington, feeling the weight of decisions pressing down. We fight, I said finally, turning back to her. But we do it my way. Complete transparency, no matter how ugly the truth gets. She nodded slowly, relief and fear warring in her expression. What about your firm? Some things are worth risking everything for. I pulled her close, breathing in her familiar scent. But Melissa? No more surprises, promise me. Her answer was another kiss, softer this time, full of promise and possibility. Outside, the clouds finally broke, revealing a sky full of stars. Tomorrow would bring new battles. But tonight, in this moment, we had found our truth. Early morning light filtered through my office blinds as I pored over stacks of internal Brown Tech documents. Coffee cups littered my desk, evidence of another sleepless night spent searching for answers. Emily? James appeared in my doorway, his expression troubled. The partners are asking about your progress on other cases. I found something, I said, ignoring his implied warning. Look at these testing protocols from... The ethical violations stopped completely after Melissa took control. He sighed, closing the door. You're really going all in on this, aren't you, despite everything? I pulled up a series of emails on my screen. The previous management team deliberately concealed information from test subjects. But look here. Melissa implemented new transparency guidelines within weeks of becoming CEO. The partners won't care, he warned. They're more concerned about your personal involvement. My phone buzzed, another message from Melissa. We'd barely seen each other this week, both buried in damage control. The distance felt necessary but painful. I need to present this evidence to the regulatory board, I said, gathering files. It shows a clear pattern of reform under new leadership. James caught my arm as I headed for the door. Emily, wait, there's something else. David's preparing to announce your removal from the case tomorrow. My stomach dropped, but determination steeled my spine. Then I better work fast. The regulatory board offices were housed in a stern government building downtown. I'd arranged an emergency meeting with the chief investigator, hoping to get ahead of the brewing storm. Ms. Parker, Diana Chen greeted me coolly. You have 30 minutes to present any new evidence. I laid out the documentation methodically, showing the stark contrast between old and new testing protocols. Brown Tech under Melissa Brown's leadership has exceeded every ethical guideline established by this board. Interesting. Diana studied the files. But it doesn't erase past violations. No, I agreed. But it shows a company actively working to right past wrongs. Isn't that what regulation is supposed to encourage? She leaned back, considering. Your passion for this case is notable. Some might say it affects your objectivity. My personal feelings don't change the facts in these documents. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. No, they don't. I'll review everything thoroughly. Leaving the building, I felt a mixture of hope and dread. My phone showed 3 missed calls from the firm, and 1 text from Melissa. Need to see you. Important news. I found her in her office, pacing. The board of directors is meeting tomorrow, she said without preamble. They're considering suspending all neural interface research. They can't, not when we're so close to proving. Emily. She caught my hand, stilling my protest. There's more. Someone leaked photos of us to the board. They're questioning my judgment, saying I compromised the company's legal defense by getting involved with our attorney. The room seemed to spin slightly. Everything was unraveling, personally and professionally, and I couldn't stop it. Maybe we should step back, I suggested, the words burning my throat. Give everyone time to focus on the facts instead of us. Is that what you want? Her voice was barely a whisper. Before I could answer, my phone rang, Diana Chen's office. With trembling fingers, I answered, putting it on speaker. Ms. Parker, after reviewing your evidence, I've made a preliminary finding. The violations occurred under previous management, and current protocols exceed our requirements. We'll be issuing a statement clearing Brown Tech of ongoing ethical concerns. Melissa's eyes filled with tears of relief. She reached for me, but I stepped back, professional instincts kicking in. Thank you, Ms. Chen. I'll await the official notice. After hanging up, we stood in charged silence. We did it, Melissa said softly. The company did it, I corrected, by choosing to do the right thing. She moved closer, her familiar scent making my resolve waver. Emily, please, don't pull away now. I need time, I said, stepping toward the door, to figure out what's left of my career after tomorrow. The setting sun painted her office in shades of gold as I left, my heart heavy with victory and loss. Sometimes winning the battle meant questioning everything you thought you were fighting for. The morning headlines hit like a sledgehammer. Brown Tech legal defense compromised by attorney-client romance. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as news outlets picked up the story. James dropped the morning paper on my desk. It's everywhere, social media, legal blogs, even the local news. I scrolled through my phone, each headline worse than the last. Photos of Melissa and me at the cycling club, walking dogs at the shelter, leaving her office late at night, all splashed across the internet. The partners are furious, James continued. They're calling an emergency meeting this afternoon. I nodded numbly, my eyes fixed on a particularly invasive photo of us through the cafe window during that rainy day. Someone had been watching, waiting, documenting our every move. Emily Parker? A delivery man appeared with a large envelope. Inside, I found documents from Brown Tech's board of directors. They were considering legal action against our firm for breach of professional conduct. My phone lit up with Melissa's name. I hesitated before answering. Have you seen? My family's lawyers are involved now, she said, her voice tight with stress. They're saying I've compromised the company's integrity. They want me to step down temporarily. The partners' meeting was as brutal as expected. David Wilson paced the conference room, brandishing printouts of news articles. You've damaged this firm's reputation beyond measure. The case was won on merit, I argued. The regulatory board's decision will be questioned due to your personal involvement, he cut in. Pack up your office, Emily. The board is suspending you pending review. Rain pounded against my windshield as I drove aimlessly through Arlington streets, my career belongings boxed up in my trunk. My phone kept buzzing with calls from reporters and concerned colleagues. I found myself parking at Melissa's house, a modest brownstone that defied her family's wealth. She opened the door before I could knock, pulling me inside from the rain. I'm so sorry, she whispered, helping me out of my wet coat. This is all my fault. No, I said firmly. We both knew the risks. Her house was warm, filled with vintage motorcycle parts and tech prototypes, the perfect blend of her two worlds. We settled on her couch, the rain creating a cocoon around us. My brother called, she said softly. He reminded me why we started this work. He said some things are worth fighting for no matter the cost. She pulled me closer, her fingers tracing my jaw. Are we worth fighting for, Emily? Instead of answering, I kissed her. We made love slowly, tenderly, the rain providing a rhythm to our movements. Later, tangled in her sheets, the world outside seemed less threatening. The media will get worse, I warned, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. They love a scandal. Let them talk, she murmured against my neck. I'm tired of hiding. Morning light found us in her kitchen, sharing coffee and reading more headlines. Her phone rang. The board wanted an emergency meeting. Come with me, she said suddenly. Let's face them together. That would only make things worse. Or it could show them that we're not ashamed. She took my hands. I'm not backing down, Emily. Not from the company, not from us. Looking into her determined blue eyes, I saw our future complicated, challenging, but real. Sometimes the biggest risks led to the greatest rewards. Okay, I said, squeezing her hands. Together. We dressed for battle, me in my best suit, her in corporate armor. As we left her house, cameras flashed from across the street. Melissa grabbed my hand defiantly. Ready? She asked. I laced our fingers together, facing the cameras with my head high. Ready. The courthouse steps loomed before us as I prepared to present our final evidence. Camera crews lined the sidewalk, their lenses tracking our every move. Melissa's hand found mine briefly before we entered. The court recognizes Miss Parker, Judge Harrison announced, her expression carefully neutral. The tension in the room was palpable as I approached the podium. Your Honor, I present evidence demonstrating Brown Tech's complete transformation under current leadership. My voice carried clearly through the hushed courtroom. These documents show systematic changes implemented by CEO Melissa Brown. For the next hour, I methodically laid out the case. Internal memos, testing protocols, ethical guidelines. Everything pointing to a company that had revolutionized its practices. Furthermore, I continued, meeting the judge's eyes, the regulatory board's investigation confirms these changes preceded any public scrutiny. From the corner of my eye, I saw Melissa straighten in her chair, pride evident in her posture. The courtroom waited as Judge Harrison reviewed the documents. Miss Parker, she said finally, your relationship with the defendant has been widely publicized. How do you respond to allegations of compromised objectivity? I took a deep breath. Your Honor, my personal life has been scrutinized, but these documents speak for themselves. The evidence is clear and independently verifiable. The judge nodded slowly. The court will take a brief recess to review all materials. In the hallway, reporters clamored for comments. Melissa stood nearby, speaking with her family's lawyers. The distance between us felt both necessary and painful. James appeared at my elbow. The partners are watching the coverage. They're impressed with your presentation. Too little, too late, I replied, straightening my jacket. When court resumed, Judge Harrison's decision was clear. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds Brown Tech's current practices not only compliant, but exceeding industry standards. Relief flooded through me as Melissa's eyes filled with tears. The victory felt bittersweet. We'd won the case, but at what personal cost? Outside, Melissa broke away from her celebration to find me. "Emily, wait, we need to talk." "The press is watching," I warned, but she pulled me into an empty conference room. "I don't care anymore," she said fiercely. "You fought for the truth, for me, for us." "Melissa." Her lips found mine, silencing my protests. The kiss was gentle but determined, full of promise and possibility. A knock interrupted us. Her family's lawyer. "Miss Brown, the board is waiting." She squeezed my hand. "Come with me?" The boardroom was intimidating, all dark wood and leather chairs. Melissa's father's portrait watched from one wall as she addressed the directors. "The court's decision validates everything we've built," she stated firmly. "And yes, I fell in love with our attorney. I won't apologize for that." Murmurs rippled through the room. The board chairman cleared his throat. "Ms. Brown, your personal choices have nothing to do with my ability to lead this company," she interrupted. "Judge me by my actions, by the changes I've implemented, by the lives our technology will improve." I stood at the back of the room, heart swelling with pride, as she defended not just her company but our relationship. The chairman's expression softened slightly. "The court's decision is convincing. Perhaps it's time for this company to embrace change on all fronts." Later, as evening settled over Arlington, we walked through the animal shelter's quiet halls. Luna and Max greeted us enthusiastically. "No more hiding," Melissa said softly, taking my hand. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Looking at her in the fading light, I knew she was right. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't winning the case, it's choosing love over fear, truth over safety, and standing proudly in that choice. The courtroom victory marked a turning point. News coverage shifted from scandal to substance as the media picked up on the technological breakthroughs Brown Tech had achieved under Melissa's leadership. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by law books and notes, drafting plans for my next chapter. A knock at the door revealed James, looking somewhat sheepish. "The partners sent me," he said, stepping inside. "They want to discuss your return to the firm." "I'm flattered," I replied, gesturing to my makeshift home office. "But I've been thinking about making a change." He nodded, understanding dawning. "You're starting your own practice. Someone needs to represent companies trying to do the right thing," I said, sharing my vision for a firm specializing in ethical technology law. My phone lit up with Melissa's name. "Speaking of change," she texted, "turn on the news." The television showed Melissa at Brown Tech headquarters, addressing a crowd of reporters. "Today marks a new era for our company," she announced. "We're implementing an independent ethics board to oversee all research protocols." Pride swelled in my chest as she outlined sweeping changes, transparent testing procedures, increased patient advocacy, and partnerships with disability rights organizations. "My brother's condition taught me that technology should serve humanity," she continued. "Starting today, Brown Tech commits to putting people before profits." The press conference ended with unexpected applause. Minutes later, she appeared at my door, still in her business suit but with a lighter energy about her. "That was quite an announcement," I said, pulling her inside. "I'm not finished yet," she smiled. The board approved my proposal to establish a legal defense fund for small tech companies focused on assistive technologies. "Melissa, that's incredible. And," she continued, taking my hands, "we need someone to head up the initiative, someone who understands both law and ethics." I caught her meaning, laughing. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership," she corrected. "Professional and personal." Later that evening, we walked through the quiet streets of Arlington, planning our future. The animal shelter lights glowed warmly as we passed. "Sarah called earlier," Melissa said. "Luna and Max were adopted, together. Sometimes things work out exactly as they should." We stopped at the cycling trail where our story began. The autumn air carried the scent of possibility. "I resigned from the firm today," I told her. "Officially. Having regrets?" I pulled her close, remembering all the moments that led us here. "Not a single one." The city lights twinkled below us as we planned our new venture, a foundation combining legal advocacy with technological innovation. It felt right, like all the pieces of our lives finally falling into place. "You know this won't be easy," I warned. "Building something new never is." Melissa's eyes sparkled with determination. "The best things in life never are, but we'll do it together." We sealed the promise with a kiss, the evening breeze carrying away the last remnants of doubt. Sometimes leaving the safe path leads you exactly where you're meant to be. A text from Sarah interrupted the moment. She needed volunteers for an upcoming adoption event. We looked at each other and smiled, knowing we'd found not just love, but purpose. The stars emerged above Arlington as we walked home, hand in hand, ready to write our next chapter. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight we celebrated the courage to choose love, truth, and the road less traveled. Spring blossomed over Arlington as we prepared for the animal shelter's biggest adoption event yet. Melissa and I had spent weeks organizing, turning the shelter's grounds into a festival of hope. "Check out our newest sponsor," Melissa called, pointing to a banner. My new law firm's logo stood proudly alongside brown text, representing our joint initiative for animal welfare. The morning sun painted the sky in pastels as volunteers bustled around, setting up booths. Sarah approached with an armful of schedules. "The cycling club just confirmed. They're leading a charity ride before the main event." I smiled, remembering how a similar ride had changed my life months ago. Now, our morning rides were a cherished routine, though considerably less dramatic than that first rainy adventure. "Emily," James waved from the registration table. After leaving Harrison Amp Parker, I'd been surprised by how many colleagues had followed, drawn to our vision of ethical legal advocacy. The event grounds slowly filled with families, potential adopters, and supporters. Brown Tech's neural interface demonstration drew crowds, showing how their technology helped disabled pet owners care for their animals. "Remember our first day here?" Melissa whispered, finding me near the adoption area. She looked radiant in casual clothes, so different from the corporate armor she'd worn when we met. "Hard to believe it's been a year," I replied, watching families meet their potential new pets. The charity ride participants returned, their enthusiasm infectious. Our cycling club had grown, becoming a community of its own. Even James had started joining our weekend rides. As afternoon approached, Melissa took the stage for her speech. The crowd hushed and my heart swelled with pride. "A year ago, I thought success meant corporate victories," she began. "Then I met someone who taught me that true success means making a difference." Her eyes found mine in the crowd. "Today, we're not just finding homes for animals. We're building a community where technology serves humanity, where legal justice supports ethical innovation, and where love breaks down every barrier." The applause was interrupted by excited barking. Luna and Max's adopters had brought them for a visit, the dogs straining at their leashes when they recognized us. "Some connections are meant to be," Sarah said softly, watching the happy reunion. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grounds, Melissa pulled me away from the crowd. We walked to the small pond where we'd first shared our truths. "There's something I need to ask you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Before she could continue, a commotion erupted behind us. Sarah was rushing over, her face glowing with excitement. "You won't believe this," she exclaimed. "The governor just arrived. She wants to recognize your joint initiative as a model for corporate community partnership." Melissa squeezed my hand. "Hold that thought," she whispered. Later, as stars appeared above Arlington, we finally escaped to our favorite cafe, the same one that had sheltered us from rain and judgment so many months ago. "Now, about that question," Melissa said, reaching for her pocket. I stopped her, pulling out a small box of my own. We stared at each other, then burst out laughing. "Great minds," she smiled, tears in her eyes. We opened our boxes together, identical rings glinting in the cafe's soft light. Sometimes the best surprises are the ones you plan together. Outside, the cycling club rode past, cheering and ringing their bells. Sarah had organized a celebration without us knowing, the whole community coming together to share our joy. As we stepped out to greet them, I looked at Melissa, my partner in every sense of the word, and knew that sometimes the best endings are really just beautiful beginnings in disguise.